Assalamu alaikum. On behalf of Beacon House School System, the organizer of School of Tomorrow events, I would like to welcome you to a world of tomorrow. From darkness to light, the 13th edition of SOT events and its fully virtual. Guess what? It's all totally virtual. The non-profit SOT event series was launched by Beacon House in 2000 as a part of its CSR and to help inform the direction of organization, while also engaging global communities in conversations shaping the future of schools and societies. My name is Saulat Fatimi. I'm a heart surgeon at the Khan University Hospital and full professor of surgery. And I have an esteemed group of guest panelists with us, and I'm going to introduce each one of you in a second. But thank you very much for organizing this Beacon House for an amazing session, and we are looking forward to it. My first panelist that I'm going to introduce is Dr. Vessel Vermouth. He's an alumnus of Beacon House, your Beacon House, in 1990, and he completed his A-levels there and followed by his MBBS at AKU. Then he went to the US. He's currently the head of infectious disease at the Khan University Hospital. He is also actively involved in COVID-19 response in the country and is a technical advisor to both the provincial and the federal governments. And he's a principal investigator for ongoing vaccine trial. He has been given a Tamgha Imtiaz for his contributions this year, and we are very proud to have Faisal associated with AKU. Faisal. We have Dr. Omer Chughtai. I am missing him right now, but that's Dr. Omer Chughtai. He's a graduate of the King Edward Medical College. He did his residency and fellowship training in pathology in Texas. He's an American board certified, returned to Pakistan to join and lead Chughtai Healthcare. He's the vice president of Histopathology and Cytology Society of Pakistan. He's a member of Entrepreneurs Organization and Young Presidents Organization. Omer, thank you for being with us.
It's a pleasure to be here.
We have Dr. Faisal Sultan, who is a graduate of King Edward's Medical College. He is board certified in internal medicine from the US, as well as he did his infectious disease fellowship from the US. He's a fellow of the Royal College of Physicians in Edinburgh and a fellow of College of Physicians and Surgeons in Pakistan also. He's a special assistant to Prime Minister on National Health Services Regulation and Coordination since 2020, and he's the Prime Minister's focal person on COVID-19. So he's our top man to represent the government today. He's the Chief Executive Officer of the Shaukat Khanum Cancer Hospital and Research Center. Faisal, thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
The last one is Dr. Nawal Salahuddin, who graduated from the Khan University in 1990. She did her internal medicine, pulmonology, as well as critical care fellowships. She triple boarded, came to Pakistan close to around 2000 and has been around since then. She went to Middle East for a little bit, but now she's back as the director at NICVD of the ICU, as well as a lead person in COVID. She is Ronaldo of all pulmonology in the country. Nawal. So, gentlemen, thank you very much for being here and being in the part of this whole system. The governments, international agencies, and health systems have an obligation to ensure the best of their ability to adequately provide healthcare for all. So we want healthcare for all by the government. However, this may not be possible during a pandemic like we saw this time with COVID, when the health resources are limited. Setting up priorities and rationing resources, especially vaccines, means tragic choices. And that's why we have ethics. Today's discussion with our panelists will answer a number of questions about our vaccine efficacy, ethics of setting priorities for the allocation of resources during the times of scarcity. We don't have a lot of vaccines. Who gets it, who doesn't get it, which is more efficacious, which is not, and that's what we will start with. I would like to start with Dr. Faisal Vermouth, and it's an open question to Omer, Nawal, Faisal Vermouth, and Faisal Sultan. What are the challenges Pakistan is facing in terms of vaccine, in terms of efficacy, its utilization and its availability, and to be given to the rest of the population. Can I start with Dr. Faisal Mahmood?
Thank you, Saulat, and thank you for having me here. So I think you've asked the challenges and in terms of a number of different things. So I think I'll focus first on, or only on actually, to start off with the acceptability. And I think, one challenge that we are facing over here is vaccine hesitancy. And this is something which is probably not new. We've seen this with polio as well. But with COVID, and since this is an adult vaccine and there's not a lot of data on adult, well, not a lot of tradition of giving vaccines to adults, this is sort of something we're facing. And every day I get questions, probably 10 to 15 a day, regarding, can this vaccine be used for this condition or that condition? And then the infodemic that you see with WhatsApp and social media regarding, vaccines causing death in 2 years, or vaccine causing, magnets to get stuck. So that really helps. So I think one challenge that we really face is vaccine hesitancy, which sort of just makes things worse by people hearing things on social media. In terms of logistics, I think Dr. Sultan is probably a better person to answer that one.
Okay, shall I?
Please, Faisal Sultan, maybe you can start. Yeah.
Okay. No, I'm just waiting for the cue from you. Right. So I think from my perspective, other than the challenge that Faisal Mahmood has mentioned, the real challenge, at least until now or until very recently, was timely availability of vaccines. Here we have a commodity which sometimes people confuse as being as easily available as cement or wheat or potatoes or something. But the fact is that this commodity is not only in short supply, high demand, but is also being, if I may use the word, ring-fenced or hoarded or kept safe for populations of countries that have either made them or are sites of manufacture or their allies. And so one of the biggest challenges initially to have a large rollout for Pakistan was the timely availability of large volumes of vaccines. One of the things that became a special challenge was that there was a promise of availability from the COVAX facility, which was, I think, well-intentioned, well-meaning, and an honest commitment. But due to things that they could not foresee, the global shortage beyond their expectations, as well as a surge in countries like India that were to be large producers, led to a situation where we had to quickly redirect, retool our strategy. So what was to be a procurement in, say, June onwards or May onwards had to be a procurement in March onwards. And so therefore, we had to look towards China and to get vaccines from there initially as a gift, but then, of course, via purchase. So to me, the biggest challenge was that. Now, there are others, which include those of logistics, as well as of communication, the infodemic, the complete confusion being put around by perhaps ill-intentioned people, I don't know. But the fact is that that was the first one that we came across with. Phase one, once, okay, so a little bit further from just procurement. At this time, those that are getting vaccinated are what I call the coalition of the willing, borrowed from the first President Bush. And the fact is that at this time, those people are coming through who have a self-perceived, self-identified risk of COVID from personal experience, from knowledge, from their social network, from friends and family getting infected. So it's actually a fairly accurate assessment of their own risk matrix, and those are coming forth. As we go through this wave, as we go through this cycle of vaccinees and the healthcare workers, as it peters off, we will then have to do and make a much better effort at pushing, communicating, and making the last mile available for everyone. So that's the upcoming challenge.
Thank you. And very well said about the challenges. Omer, do you want to add to this?
Yeah, I think both doctors, Faisal, have made some very pertinent points. I think it starts with availability. If you don't have anything available, then you can't vaccinate people. And if you remember, going back to that infodemic, there was a chart that was circulating on social media towards the end of last year, where it predicted that certain parts of the world, Pakistan included, would not get vaccine access till 2022. And a lot of credit is owed to Dr. Faisal, Sultan, Dr. Omer, the NCOC, the federal government, and how they've gone about procuring the vaccine, whether directly from China and now through COVAX. And of course, the initial COVAX commitment fell through. It was plain for all of us to see what happened. And everybody is seeing on their TV screens what's been happening in India. So their predicament is plain to see. So in that context, it's a great accomplishment to have the vaccine available and to have the vaccine rollout going as quickly as it is. Now, the real challenge in the coming days, I agree with Dr. Faisal Mahmood, now is going to be about vaccine hesitancy and how to overcome that.
Very well said. Nawal, do you want to add to this? What are the biggest challenges faced in Pakistan?
So I appreciate all the points that have been made by both the doctors Faisal and Omer. So let me put it at a different perspective. Dr. Faisal Sultan has spoken about at the government level, and Omer and Faisal have spoken about a general aspect. Let me talk about specifics. So I take care of people who are sick in the ICU with COVID, and I talk to their families, and I recommend, as part of the counseling that I do, I recommend that they all go out there and get vaccinated. And you would be surprised how many of them don't want to. Specific kind of population in my professional practice, I'm an actively serving critical care physician. And these are people who tend to be less aware of social media, who tend to be less connected, if you would say that, to the internet. But there's a real reluctance in terms of the trust that they place in the vaccine itself. There's a great fear that we can, I think, recognize from how people have looked at polio vaccines or measles vaccines. And it's the same reluctance, it's the same fear that I see coming across. And if I speak to them about their family member who's dying of COVID and how we want to protect other members of the family, they say, well, he took his chances, but the vaccine, it's from China. We don't know what it'll do to us. And then there's this joke that goes around that I won't repeat. I'm sure everybody's heard about how speaking in Chinese, which I find distasteful and upsetting. So I think availability and vaccine hesitancy will have to be personalized to the kind of people and to the kind of expectations that they have from the vaccine. And that in itself will be a multi-pronged educational incentive that we'll have to think about as we roll it out. There are people in society who would like to have a vaccine that has a reported efficacy of over 90%, and they don't understand why they're being offered a vaccine that has a reported efficacy of 70%. And or there are people who will speak about antibodies and how they had their first dose and they don't have antibodies and therefore it's a useless vaccine. So, I think the partly educated, the people who subscribe to pseudoscience is a very important part of society that we have to overcome this vaccine hesitancy that we're seeing.
That's very true, Nawal. And as I always tell our students also, we live in Karachi and in Pakistan, we don't live in Boston. So we have a different perspective, we have a different way of looking at things. I'm going to, before I proceed towards the very touchy and complicating issues about who gets the vaccine, who decides who gets the vaccine and all this stuff, I would like Faisal to just comment briefly that remember these vaccines have been prepared with a record time of research. Like normally a vaccine takes about 20 years to develop. These vaccines have been developed within a year. And a lot of people question about its safety and efficacy. And there are 25 different companies, and correct me if I'm wrong, more than 25 different companies making vaccines. Faisal, do you want to comment on how safe they are and how efficacious they are different types, and so that we will have an idea and we can proceed further.
I'm assuming Faisal N, not Faisal S, or Faisal S or Faisal M. You gotta be more. Okay. All right.
Please.
So in terms of the development of the vaccine, so a couple of things to keep in mind is that vaccine development does take time. You're absolutely right. It takes years to develop a vaccine. But despite the speed in which the vaccine was developed, we didn't really cut many corners into the safety. The way that this was done, which you may know, is that the phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3 trials were sort of telescoped onto each other. And as the phase 1 and phase 2 and phase 3 were going on, manufacturing started at the same time. So, which was a risk, because if the vaccine did not show efficacy, and did not, all of that manufacturing would go to waste. But the point was to get the vaccine out as soon as possible. And even despite this, as Faisal has mentioned, there is a shortage of vaccine. Safety, in most cases, safety for any drug or even a vaccine is generally the first 3 months. That's when you look at most of the safety signals. And that's when the EUA has been given. But keep in mind that all of the vaccine trials, safety data is still being collected. So it's not like the trials are finished. Even the CanSino trial that happened over here, we're still collecting data on our participants. So safety is ongoing, and like any other drug, if it's a very, very rare side effect, you only find this in post-marketing, which we are, very rare side effect. So please rest assured, this is a safety. All of these are very safe vaccines. And whenever there was a safety signal, this really was abandoned.
Okay, so they are safe then. So the people should be getting it, and a lot of people will have these misconceptions. So that's untrue. Nawal, can you just briefly mention how much Pakistan's healthcare system has been affected with COVID-19? Now, in AKU, a lot of resources have been diverted towards COVID-19. Similarly, I bet all the hospitals in the country, especially the government hospitals. What about NICVD and general Pakistan in perspective? How much of the healthcare system has been affected just because of the COVID-19? People not getting rest of the healthcare.
So thank you, Saulat, for that question. We have, across Pakistan, created a registry of critically ill patients with COVID. And it runs parallel to a registry for all severe acute respiratory illnesses. So I can tell you that not just government hospitals, but private hospitals and partially government, partially private hospitals are all suffering because of the high numbers of patients that come in waves and is unpredictable. Elective procedures, routine healthcare maintenance, routine medical follow-up such as chemotherapy has all been affected. People tend to stay at home. They don't want to go to the hospital because they're worried they'll get COVID, and therefore they need their own health. Might have been a preventable duration of a chronic illness, things like decompensated heart failure, for example. So the consequence of COVID is not going to be only the mortality and the morbidity that the virus itself brings, but the impact it has on availability.
Okay, so that's impressive, because let me tell you, a lot of places, US was overwhelmed with COVID-19, and that's how they had to study the vaccine availability, vaccine preparation. Faisal, Sultan, I have this question for you. This is like a little touchy question. Who decides who gets the vaccine first in a given country, especially in Pakistan, and how is it decided?
Right. So I think this was brutally simple, to be honest. We had put together a number of cascading committees to decide on this whole vaccine issue. First and foremost was a set of experts that helped to shortlist out of the over 130 candidates, of which nearly 24 at that time, now more than 30, were serious candidates, and to see, okay, where shall we be looking? And to forecast how much we would get, or which vaccines would be the ones that would be at least the front runners in this whole game. That was one. The second one was a subcommittee of experts again to look at global practices as well as to contextualize for Pakistan and to decide and recommend the sequence of vaccination. And we got a very clear, literally almost a black and white on this. And what we got was very simple, was that we needed to do a 1A, 1B, 2A, 2B. And so the 1A, 1B was, of course, healthcare workers, frontline. Then there was healthcare workers, general. And of course, then age-wise, starting downwards from the over 80 cohort. And that's pretty much almost without exception that has happened. So we've just gone down the age cohort. There were a couple of riders that people wanted to add in, but given our the structure of our health system, we did not do those. And that was, for example, the so-called immunocompromised. And we felt that at that stage in the game, it was nearly impossible to have a credible, reliable system of somebody being able to reliably say, well, this is an immunocompromised person. Also, given the risk, when once analyzed, the greatest relative risk that was provided for mortality, for example, was age itself. So this is what we ended up doing, and this is where we've been so far. So far, we've not had to make the kind of decisions that would have challenged any morality necessarily, barring one minor one. I'll tell you the one that's around the corner is that as of now, we have 100,000 doses of Pfizer available. And of course, if there was ever a ek anar saw bimar, that's happening right now. So the semi-literate and the quasi-scientific and the worried well are literally asking when they can get it. And so this is where there is going to be a challenge. But again, we've reached out to our literate scientific community, to our medical community to guide us. And we actually have the near final draft of who's going to get that.
Very nicely said, Faisal. I think the government has done an amazing job in distributing. It's just us, just not some of us are not getting it. Omer, I have this question for you. And there is a talk in the town that the government will never be able to procure all the vaccines by themselves. Okay. Remember, we are a third world country. We don't have that much money. We have issues with a lot of other things. So vaccine doesn't take that precedence. So a lot of people are asking about privatization. And so the companies will bring in these vaccines privately. Some of them have already come in Karachi, Sputnik. But then there was also a question mark, the ethical question. Only the rich got it because it was costing a lot of money. So what are your thoughts about privatizing this entire vaccine issue? And the government also will do whatever it can, and then the private companies will also bring in the vaccines. Omer.
I'm very happy you asked this question. The way I see it, in a situation like this, there are no perfect solutions. There are no perfect solutions for a country as well capitalized as Canada or the US even. So in this country where we deliver healthcare both privately and through the public healthcare system, it was only natural and it was a common sense solution for the government to allow the private sector to participate in being part of the solution. But for context, so far, the government of Pakistan has vaccinated north of, correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Faisal, more than 2 million people, maybe even more. And the private sector so far has vaccinated 25,000 people. So let's just relax about who has got the vaccine and who has not got the vaccine. So by and large, a huge number of people have got the vaccine at no charge through the government. Now,
Omer, in fact, can I just interrupt? Thank you for saying this, but the fact is it's actually 6.7 million jabs as of today.
There you go. So I think where this issue became such a lightning rod was because the initial availability of the vaccine, it appeared that it was going to happen right around the time when the government program was rolling out. But the vaccine became available several weeks later. And at that point in time, the vaccine was already available to senior citizens. It was available to it had been available to healthcare workers for a number of weeks at that point in time. So I don't see particularly this as a particularly big issue. On top of that, remember that it was not just individuals who wanted to get vaccinated. We were approached, are still being approached by large employers, by large school systems, by the multinationals that work in Pakistan. And I think going forward, it makes sense to allow employers, to allow large companies, to allow individuals to try and shoulder the burden a little bit, because the government cannot, I mean, in my estimation, and should not be expected to vaccinate everybody in this country down the road, because I don't think this is a one-time thing. I think down the road we'll probably end up needing boosters. Maybe this will be an annual thing. We don't know that yet. So
Well said.
we take
Yeah,
care
go
of
ahead.
COVID patients, admitted COVID patients together in public hospitals and private hospitals. So why can't we prevent the disease together also?
Yeah, the ideal situation in the world will be that half of the population in the world gets vaccinated. Pakistan is close to about 22 crore population, plus minus a few crores. So, like, out of those 22 crores, we are talking about 10 crore population getting vaccinated. Right now, we are talking about like a small percentage. I don't think this is something which can be answered right now, but obviously the privatization is something to look forward to, and what Omer has said has really been the thing. But now the question comes in, and I pose this question to Nawal. Should people be concerned of what type of vaccine are they getting vaccinated with, or should they just get vaccinated? Like AstraZeneca, there are question marks about it, and some people are saying that since the EU has banned it, that's why we have got Pakistan has got it. All kinds of rumors are there, but Sputnik, Covax, Sinopharm, AstraZeneca, is there, if anybody is getting any vaccine, should they just get vaccinated, or should they wait for the perfect one? Nawal.
So I'm just going to say one thing. Everyone who is in an ICU right now, who is dying of COVID respiratory failure right now, is unvaccinated.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say, anything is better than 0% protection. You get what you can get, and you get it as quickly as possible.
Yeah. So that's Faisal. You concur with that? Is that correct? Any vaccine?
Yes, so we've been looking at this at our institute as well, and almost everybody who's admitted. Almost
Faisal
everybody.
Mahmood. You need to change your name, Faisal. Faisal Mahmood. So that's the question too. Will you agree with the Nawal? Any vaccine is good enough.
So as an aside, Faisal S and I often are in together, so we usually go by Faisal S and Faisal M, which makes life easier. But anyway, so generally, yes. I agree with Nawal that almost everybody that is admitted currently at our hospital with severe COVID has been vaccinated. And this is sort of a pattern we're seeing. And get whatever you can. Don't worry about travel right now. Worry about your life, which is more important, especially people who are more vulnerable.
So, Omer, I have to come back to you and ask you. People are constantly concerned about once they get vaccinated, they want to check their antibodies. Is it worth getting your antibodies checked, or is it just a sham?
Well, I'll tell you one thing, that antibody envy is a thing. And unfortunately, it's a status symbol, unfortunately. People ask me on Twitter, people ask me everywhere I go that I have this many antibodies, that person has this many antibodies, what's an antibody level that's appropriate? The test has to be made available for various reasons, but I think the utilization of the test is less than optimal right now. I think what matters most is that you have antibodies, as long as you have antibodies, because we don't know enough about what is a protective level of antibody response, how long these antibodies are going to last. So, but I like to remind people that our entire understanding of COVID goes back about 18 months. So in 18 months, we've come a long way from discovering the virus, discovering the disease, to developing a vaccine, to preventing it, to now monitoring the antibody response to it. So in another 18 months, we'll know a lot more. In the meantime, everybody does not need to be checking their antibody levels, or definitely not comparing them with other people as if they're comparing their blood sugar levels or their HbA1c levels.
Yeah. So that's what
Can I?
everybody. Yes, please, Nawal.
Saulat,
go
can
ahead.
I just interject here? Can I? So let me just say upfront, I'm not an immunologist or an ID specialist, but I wonder if we need to educate people about the correlates of protection. I have people all the time coming to me and saying, well, we got vaccinated and we have no antibodies, or we have a very low. And I keep trying to explain to people that it is more than just the antibody response that protects you. It's other kinds of immune responses, the T cells, maybe some of the B cells, other things. And I think as a part of the collective that's educating, we need to start talking about that so we can and at least nip in the bud this whole focus on antibodies and measuring them. And as Omer rightly said, antibody envy. That's a great term. I'm going to start.
Very well said, Nawal. And I think the antibodies is a hoax. Faisal, Mahmood, do you agree with that before I proceed with further question?
Well, I completely agree, and I also want to hear what Faisal has to say about this. But the other thing to keep in mind, really very importantly, is that the antibodies that are available in the market are there for diagnosis, not to look for immunity. And that's a very important thing. So these are not antibodies which check for immunity. They're the same antibodies that you would check, for example, for dengue or for HIV. And over there, you really don't really think about you have immunity against HIV. But I think Faisal should also sort of chime in, I think, on the antibody issue.
Very well said.
Very briefly. So, I mean, this has just become Nawal. This is beyond the bud now. It's a fully flowered problem right now. So, I've tried. I've gone hoarse trying to explain it. And the two things when I say that seem to make the most sense to people who are not totally scientifically educated or even the scientifically illiterate, is this. One, remember HIV. The antibody is absolutely a zero correlate of any immunity. That's one. The other one, I always tell them, look, if you just counted the artillery pieces or the airplanes in a country and said, okay, this is what will mean that they can win a war, it is about as misleading as that, simply because the immune system is certainly at least a log or 2 log fold more complex than any national defense system. But anyway, this is almost a crazy idea right now. We've got to continue to fight it and educate.
Faisal, Sultan, I have another question for you. Remember, like in the US, right now, over 2 million people are getting vaccinated on a daily basis. And they have got to the situation where 200,000 plus people were getting infected on a daily basis. Now they're in the 20,000s. So we, at this point in time, are way far behind of vaccinating our individuals. Though for whatever reason, bless of Allah or whatever it is, we are protected from that kind of a problem. However, what are your thoughts of making a local vaccine, or are we in the process of making a local vaccine in Pakistan right now, which will be available to all the masses at a cheaper rate?
Okay, so I'll respond to your specific question, but because in your question you had a couple of other things, I want to talk about those as well. Well, first of all, Allah's blessing is always there. You can't take the next breath without it. But on the other hand, people tend to forget. And somehow there is this sense of disbelief almost as to why Pakistan has done well. And I'll tell you why Pakistan has done well beyond the unknown unknowns. It's one simple fact: data-driven, coordinated response. All large federal structure countries, Brazil, US, India, have struggled, have been on the ropes because of a non-coordinated response. And one of the great hallmarks that we have had is the ability to respond collectively together and to ongoing data based on science, not on whims. So that's one thing. The other one, of course, you mentioned the ready and free availability. The US is at 1 million or something per day. We started out slow, but right now we're touching 280,000 almost every single day. And our target is to reach 500,000 a day, and adjusted for population size and so on and other factors. If we do 500,000 a day, we'll be in pretty good shape. How do we get there? At the present time, we'll get there through government-supported vaccines coming in. We've got no shortage of money. It's not a money issue at all. Let me clarify. We've spent over $150 million, and we are willing and happy and able to spend many multiples of that without breaking a sweat. So that's the issue. Now, whether we have or should have a local vaccine, we should. So the first step, of course, was to do formulation, fill and finish, which just has gotten done. That itself was quite an onerous process at the NIH. But we're in the midst of conversations to actually have full production, which means from raw material. That'll take some time, and it probably will be too late for this epidemic. Lastly, the whole milieu and the ecosystem required to have innovation, which then leads to sparking of real vaccines which are inherently domestically made and so on, will take much longer. But I think if we can just at least produce or at least produce large parts of it within Pakistan, will make a lot of difference. This NIH vaccine, for example, they were unwilling to or unable to supply more than, say, 1 million a month, all finished, right? But they said, if you can do the finishing yourself, if you can do the formulation yourself, putting in all the incipients, doing all the 24 quality checks, all the way from presence of antigen to safety to this to that, then we can supply you 3 million a month. So right there, just with one thing, you've tripled your supply of the CanSino vaccine. So I think this is the path we need to go for. And lastly, very quickly, DRAP, the Drug Regulatory Authority of Pakistan, will need a major makeover. And that is coming. And I will reach out to many of you to help us form the specialist committees to do that oversight. Thank you.
Faisal, Mahmood, and Nawal, probably he's looking at you guys to help that DRAP regulatory stuff. Faisal, Mahmood, I have a question for you. Now, this is a very important question.
Hold on, Saulat, you're not going to go free so easy. Remember, it's not just drugs. It's going to be Drugs and Devices Regulation Authority. So get ready, okay?
That's it. We got it. Okay. Faisal, Mahmood, there is a very interesting question people have, and we have recently had a doctor who got infected after the vaccination. What is the rate of reinfection or an infection after getting vaccinated completely? And what is the data? And if you get infected, what are the risks of you getting severely disease? You get a severe disease. What is the consensus on that? Faisal, Mahmood.
So I think this is a really important question because it keeps coming up over and over again. So one thing to keep in mind is that these vaccines are really good at preventing serious illness, not really preventing disease. So in other words, if you do get infected, the chance of getting serious disease, needing oxygen, getting admitted or dying reduces quite a bit. In terms of what's the risk of getting the infection, because often I get people who come to me and say, I had the vaccine and look, I've COVID, the vaccine doesn't work. So the risk of infection really does reduce, but not as much as severe disease. So even if you got the vaccine, you need to take precautions because you can still get the infection and you can spread it as well. Now, between the vaccines, these numbers vary, and it is extremely difficult to compare one vaccine with the other because each of the trials were done in different settings. Each of the trials were done in different ways. So it's really, in many ways, comparing apples and oranges. So even though you'll see a number 90%, the 70 versus 50, these are not really comparable numbers. And unless you have a head-to-head trial, you really can't compare. So bottom line is severe illness, extremely good. Non-severe illness, decent is the better way.
Well said. Omer, Chughtai, I have a question for you. And the question is, this Indian variant, which has created a havoc in India, especially and the rest of the world also. The first Indian variant was reported lately on the newspaper. What are your thoughts about the different variants and how do you check in the labs? And what are your thoughts about how should we get ourselves have knowledge regarding these variants?
Well, first of all, I think we so far seem to have dodged the bullet on the Indian variant because we don't really have a very open border with India, and then through the Middle East, traffic has been very limited. As far as monitoring for which variants we have in our population, of course, we want to be able to do gene sequencing. I know for a fact that the federal government, the NIH and then Punjab, and I think also, but I'm not directly aware of that, they have been doing gene sequencing to monitor what variants we are seeing in our population. I don't believe it is anywhere near, in terms of the number of tests that they're running, anywhere near what a country such as the UK or the US might run. But it's again, this is capacity that did not exist a year ago. So in response to the pandemic, I think there are a lot of investment has gone into developing these capacities. So we do have some insight into what we are seeing. We're doing similar testing here. The private sector is contributing, but I think it's a work in progress as far as our capacity to monitor the variants circulating in our population. Again, this is not something that's going to go away. So the investments that we make in the healthcare infrastructure today are going to bear fruit for a long time to come. And I think one thing that perhaps the pandemic has done is it has really highlighted the importance of a strong healthcare infrastructure. And I think the federal government response, the provincial government's response, they prioritized it early. They didn't let it slide. The funding or the support. I think, like Dr. Faisal Sultan was saying, true healthcare professionals have been, in the decision-making capacity in all governments. Dr. Faisal Mahmood has been involved with the Sindh government since the beginning. Dr. Yasmin Rashid in Punjab, and then Dr. Sultan, of course, has been involved. So I think a lot of investment and a lot of awareness has come out of this pandemic, and hopefully that will help us in the long term.
Nawal and Faisal Mahmood, do you want to comment on these variants? Have you seen those variants in your hospitals?
Yeah, so we know, and actually over here again, Faisal Sultan has a more national view of the variants, but we are doing some variant studies within AKU, and we've seen pretty much most of these variants over there. Remember, we do have limited capabilities in looking at some of the newer variants, for example, the B1617, which is the Indian variant. So we don't have it as yet, but I believe NIH actually has more capabilities, and I also believe that NIH is setting up sort of a variant sort of network to do sequencing. So maybe again, Sultan can talk about that.
Sure.
Saulat, so, I'd like to. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Nawal. No, go ahead, please.
I just wanted to, for the audience, I just wanted to re-emphasize the point for the audience that the value of looking for a variant is in tweaking the vaccine or in understanding the epidemiology of the disease in the area that you're looking at. The value of looking for a variant is meaningless to the individual patient or to the general public. We understand that the virus is mutated, but we know that all viruses mutate, and the more, as time goes by, there will be more. So there seems to be a general hesitancy on the part of most people vaccinated because they're worried about the variants and they want to wait for the newest version of the vaccine. People are waiting for the one that is most effective because, well, we may have the Indian variant. And I'd like to reemphasize that that's not a good plan. The variants are not of importance in the vaccine rollout and should people don't get vaccinated.
Faisal Sultan, you had something to say.
Yeah. Nawal, you should be the health ministry spokeswoman, I should say. Beautifully said. I cannot improve on what you said. On the variants, I can tell you that we formed a network. We do have the capability of doing them. We do not have the capability of doing the kind of throughput that the UK is doing. We're putting everybody else to shame, really. They've really done the largest number if you look at country sizes, etc. Nevertheless, so we have the capability. We are doing much smaller numbers, but we at least have a sense of where things are. So, for example, the B117, the UK variant, started to become the predominant variant in Pakistan, in the northern half of Pakistan around mid-Feb. and was around 50% here and about a third or 25%, say about 30% in, say, the south in Karachi and Hyderabad. And this number has actually gone up. In the north now, it is the predominant variant, and it's catching up in the south as well. We're also looking, of course, the other variants, P1, 1351, as well as the Indian version. And we yesterday reported the first sequenced Indian version out of Islamabad, and I'm not at liberty to share details on who it was or where it came from just yet. It'll be coming out in a public announcement pretty soon, within the next few hours. So that's being contact traced and all. And as Nawal said, the real value of the variant business is for public health professionals. But for the individual, I think I still remind them that, look, keep using this little vaccine you have in your hand.
So that brings us to one last question before I go on to the audience questions. There are lots of questions that have been coming in, and thank you, Beacon House, for arranging all this. Vessel Vermouth, this is the question, and to Nawal also, and to all of you, Omer and Faisal Sultan. The CDC in the US decided that whoever is vaccinated does not need to wear masks and can have everything open. Is that true for our country? Is that going to be true for us? Do you agree to it? Most of my friends living in the US, they don't agree to their CDC requirements, but do you agree to this? And why did they take that kind of a decision?
So agree to this in Pakistan or agree to this in the US?
This was taken in US. Do you think this will be taken in Pakistan, and do we agree to it?
So not in the near future. And the biggest reason for this is that we don't have that vaccine coverage which they have in the US. Also, keep in mind again that each of these vaccines is different, and this is particularly for the mRNA vaccines which are being deployed in the US for the most part. There's a lot of data on the mRNA vaccines and not as much data in terms of transmission dynamics for the other vaccines over here. So at this point, I would say that this would not be recommended over here, that if you've had the vaccine, you sort of strip off your mask.
I totally agree that everybody should be wearing a mask and using sanitizers. Okay, guys, there are lots of questions that have come in, and I think Faisal Sultan and Omer may be able to answer this. The question that has been posted just recently has been, how will the government vaccinate the large population which does not have a CNIC? What will they do? To Faisal Sultan.
Okay.
Sure.
So first of all, there is a population that does not have a C. Let's talk about adults first. This is a very solvable problem. Let's look at adults first. Most adults, and I'm not saying all, most adults in Pakistan do have a CNIC. Those that don't are being facilitated in getting one quickly. So therefore, this is an nth or a 99th or a 98th centile problem. We really need to get to that 98th centile in parallel. So this problem is being sorted for the Pakistani population that, for whatever set of reasons, does not actually have a CNIC. I'm talking about adults. For those under 18, the Bay form is there. They're easily captured in the national database. So I don't think that will be a problem once we get to vaccinating those that are under 18. We're also catering for, because this is not, we are asking others to be not nationalistic about it. We also have to remember that this is a humanistic problem. And therefore, we are trying to make sure that even Afghan citizens who live in Pakistan, foreigners who are working here, for example, we had a lot of clamor about healthcare workers in the health system who are non-Pakistanis. So we opened it up for them. The Afghan card is also added into our database so that you can use that to get yourself vaccinated. Of course, there are people in camps who may not have even that. And so we are trying to have a system to reach out there as well. Not an easy problem to solve, but solvable for sure. So that's, for getting to those that are undocumented. There are details that I won't bore everyone, but just so that there is a plan there.
Okay, there's an open question to all of you. Omer, if you want to take that. So there's a question mark about the Chinese vaccines and the Russian vaccines we have in Pakistan. Okay, we accept them. We have heard the panelists say that they are as good as anything. They're efficacious. They're safe. But some of the countries are not accepting this. Our expats and our medical students or students or regular students who are going abroad, they're not accepting those vaccines. Should they get revaccinated? What should we do about this? What is the government doing about it? And what should we do about this? Omer, can you take this question and then we can proceed with other people?
I think individual countries will take their cue from the WHO as far as accepting what vaccines to take for their immigration purposes. As these vaccines come up for approval with the World Health Organization, they will continue to be added to the list of vaccines, or for that matter, vaccines that originate in the US. The FDA authorization will work for them. So these lists are not stagnant or are not frozen in time. I think these lists of vaccines approved for various countries will continue to increase with more and more vaccines added onto them.
Okay. Anyone else wants to comment on that?
Very quickly. So this mine is better than yours kind of situation is prevalent right now, but it's not a static situation. I'd like to remind everyone that all of us have relied on, used, and which has been accepted, the yellow vaccination card that the WHO issues. It is the remit of the World Health Organization to ensure that there is global portability of protection of one sort or the other, and whatever they authorize ought to be then acceptable to others. For a while, some of this, my vaccine is better than yours will continue. And we will have odd situations where to enable travel, education, or employment, some folks will have to get a mix and match. So I think this will all settle down over the next 6 to 12 months.
Okay, this is an open question to all the panelists. Nawal, you may want to start with that. And the question is, will we ever get out of this COVID pandemic?
Well, that sounds like wishful thinking. If it's not this pandemic, it'll be something else on it. I think what this has taught us is that healthcare systems are fragile. The best systems in the world have collapsed, unexpectedly so. It's taught us the value of, looking at the smaller things, the closer things, and perhaps looking at what's close to home and valuing that more. Sure, this pandemic may go ahead. And it's just like the influenza pandemic. It was 1918, but I'm sure they felt the same way as we do now. We've also come a long way in the past year and a half. We have reduced mortality. So, we've learned a lot. We've learned a lot of good things. We've learned a lot about how to manage this disease. And I think we'll have to live with it. But just like dengue and just like typhoid, that were horrible, tragic diseases in themselves when they came out, I think we'll get some control and we'll get some degree of normalcy back.
Omer, you want to wrap it up in 30 seconds? What is your final thought on this?
I think all things change in time. This will also change. But the need for us to continue to focus on healthcare infrastructure development in our country will remain. And I hope that as the pandemic fades, our focus does not shift away from this very important sector in our country's development.
Faisal, Mahmood, do you have any final few words to say on this?
Just that get vaccinated. That's the only thing I have to say. Just get vaccinated if you haven't gotten vaccinated as yet. Don't think twice about it. There's a great opportunity that you have to get the vaccine. So just go and get the jab.
Faisal Sultan.
Very, very much aligned with what Faisal said. I think the only way, the question you asked, which is how do we get out of it, and Nawal answered it very nicely. I think we will get out of it. But one very short, relatively short path is the vaccine. Please go get it. Please go get it. Stop listening to nonsensical conspiracy theories.
Thank you, panelists. I would like to thank the Beacon House system for arranging this. I would like to thank our esteemed panelist, Dr. Omer Chughtai, the director of Chughtai Health Systems, Dr. Faisal Sultan, who's a special assistant of the Prime Minister on COVID, Dr. Nawal Salahuddin, who's a pulmonologist and an intensivist, who's the director at NICVD of the COVID Center, and Dr. Vessel Vermouth, who is the head of ID, infectious diseases at AKU. Every challenge in life makes you smarter. And this is a challenge which humanity has never faced. And this is why it has to make us smarter from this. I don't know whether it will make us smarter or not, but I can tell you my favorite quote is from Batman, and which said, the quote is, why do we fall? So that we learn to pick ourselves up. We have learned to pick ourselves up. We have learned the better things in life. We have learned, my friends and I have started cycling. Some people have started doing other things. People have spent more time with their families. But guys, coming back to the topic here, please get vaccinated. As Faisal Mahmood rightly put, please get vaccinated. Faisal Sultan also said that. Nawal mentioned that none of the people who are very, very sick were vaccinated at NICVD. And Omer has rightly mentioned that there is no point in getting the antibodies checked. It's just a status symbol. Just get yourself vaccinated. So all of these vaccines, whether it is Sputnik, Sinopharm, Covax, AstraZeneca, Pfizer, Moderna, all of them are equally safe, efficacious. They may have an efficacy level from 70% to 90%, but what difference does it make? You're not a statistic. You may be in that 70% or 90%. So whatever is available, just do it. The government has done a tremendous job of getting, with all its limited resources, that got us the vaccine. It's us. It's up to us, the citizens of Pakistan, the citizens of the world, to get ourselves vaccinated and not worry about the rumors of these vaccines creating some bionic things inside us. They're all rumors. The vaccines have to be used, and they are for us. I would like to wrap up this panel discussion by saying that thank you so much for arranging this. This has been one of the best panel sessions I've ever attended, and it has been very useful to me. And I hope all the children who have watched this from Beacon House, all the teachers, all the people, the population of Pakistan, the faculty, the students, the rest of the people, the businessmen who have watched this, they must have got a lot of information out of these panelists. Thank you, Omer. Thank you, Faisal Mahmood, Faisal Sultan, and Nawal. And thank you very much, Beacon House Systems. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Saulat.
Thank you.